Hi, I'm Cecile and welcome back to my channel From Canada to Adana. Today I'm going to be talking about the things I miss about living in Istanbul and the things I don't miss. But first, if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, please do so now. That way you won't miss a single video. All right, let's get started. We lived in Istanbul for 7 years. My husband and I, 2 of our 3 kids were born there. And we loved our time in Istanbul. Istanbul is an amazing city. It truly deserves its title as World City. There's just so much to do. I had a great job. We loved where we lived. We loved our kids' school. We were in the center of one of the most exciting cities in the world, but we were still surrounded by greenery. So we were really lucky in many ways. Our life there was also, dare I say, a little bit on the glamorous side. Great restaurants, great food, great people. The people we met and were friends with were really at the top of their fields, just so stimulating, so interesting, so exciting. So then maybe it's no surprise that the first thing I miss about living in Istanbul is the cultural activities, specifically museums, even more specifically art museums. My favorite museums were Borusan, the Istanbul Modern Museum, and the Pera Museum. Those 3 were the ones I tried to get to several times a year and to not miss any new exhibition. We just don't have that here in Adana. The second thing I miss about Istanbul is its internationalism. Through my own place of work, through my kids' school, we really met people from so many different countries. And even just walking around Istanbul in our daily lives, we met people from all over the place. So it really is truly multicultural. The third thing I miss is that grittiness that I think a lot of big cities have. The different neighborhoods in Istanbul have their own special vibe. So while my son was at the German consular school in Taksim Tunnel, I would go to that neighborhood regularly, and I really enjoyed being there. We didn't get over to the Asian side as much as I would have liked, but every time we did, especially when we had friends visiting from abroad, we would take them across to Kadıköy or Üsküdar, and those neighborhoods too, if you know, have their own really special vibe. And of course, there's the old town, right? Where the Blue Mosque is, where the Hagia Sophia is, the Grand Bazaar. Living there over the years, I started to realize that the Grand Bazaar especially wasn't just for tourists. There were some things that I wanted to get there or needed to get there. And so whenever I was down in that part of the neighborhood, you just feel kind of connected to thousands and thousands of years of history, and that's really special. Another thing I miss about living in Istanbul is the mentality of the people, which in generally was a little bit closer to mine, a little bit more European. So where I live now in Adana, it's a little bit more Middle Eastern, I'd say, and I don't want anyone to be jumping up in arms and saying, what do you mean we're not Middle Eastern? But there are some very subtle undercurrents in the way people think that I think Istanbul is more European and Adana is a bit more Middle Eastern. To be specific, I think people in Adana are a little bit more into the collective as opposed to the individual. There's more value placed on collectivism, on the family, on the well-being of the group, whereas Istanbul, I think, is more European insofar as, or Northern European insofar as, more emphasis on the individual. Now, before I get too nostalgic and start to say, oh, why did we leave? We shouldn't have left. Let me tell you and remind myself some of the things I don't miss about living in Istanbul. Number 1 is the rushed pace, the fast pace of things. Here in Adana, things are much more slow. Time is more of a guideline, a suggestion than a hard and fast rule. People really will make time for you, for other people, for what is right in front of them. Now, obviously, this comes with some drawbacks. If you are trying to be punctual, your time will be wasted by others who are making you wait. But I really have come to understand and appreciate the slower pace of life and the way people really will make time for you. The element of spontaneity that this leaves room for here in Adana is also something I really like. Number 2, I do not miss feeling unsafe. So again, I don't want to be giving anybody safety advice or safety warnings, but the last 2 years that we were in Istanbul, I felt unsafe because there were a series of terrorist events that happened really, within a period of about a year, and they were all, each one was getting a little bit closer in kilometers to where we were living, and I just started to feel unsafe. I was also home alone with my 3 boys the night of the attempted coup, July 15th, July 16th, and that was really scary, and that affected me as well. From almost the minute we moved to Adana, those worries just went away. Now, again, I don't want to give anybody wrong advice. Adana is safe, Adana is unsafe. You can go do that research through your government. Generally, since moving to Adana, I personally have not looked over my shoulder once. I have felt really, really safe, both in crowded places, walking alone in lonely places, isolated places, and just in general. Another thing I don't miss about living in Istanbul is the way that we lived in a bubble while we were there. I'll call it an expat bubble, although that's not entirely accurate. And I should also clarify that I'm not faulting anybody. This was partly, that was the circumstance we were in, but it was also choices I made. I was working really hard, full time. I also had 3 young children in the years, babies really, in the years that we lived there. So were I in Istanbul at a different time and like a different life stage, I might have interacted differently with the city. But the years that we were in Istanbul, living on the campus of the school I worked at in faculty housing contributed to my sense of being in a bubble. So there were a few different bubbles we were in. We were in the bubble that was my work life and the people I worked with. There was the bubble of foreigners that we knew through my kids' schooling. And just generally, I didn't really feel I was connected to the city, the living, breathing city, and its citizens. Living in Adana, I feel more a part of Turkey. I feel part of my neighborhood. I feel part of my city. I feel part of the different community groups that we're a part of. The final thing that I don't miss about living in Istanbul is the traffic and the amount of time it took to get anywhere. So, like again, many big cities, I think, you need to plan where you're going and adjust for the time depending on the time of day. So there were certain errands that I used to have to run in Istanbul. Let's just say, for example, I need to go to the Grand Bazaar for some reason. I would time that to go pretty early on a Saturday morning to arrive just as they're opening, get my errands done, and get back to where I live to hopefully avoid any traffic. Now here in Adana, I can get to most places that I want to go in 20 to 30 minutes by car. It takes longer, of course, if you're taking public transportation. But when I first moved here 14 years ago, I went everywhere by public transportation. And, it's doable. It's definitely a fraction of the size of Istanbul. So there you have it. Things I miss about living in Istanbul, things I don't miss in Istanbul. Isn't it true really though about anywhere in life? Any city, no city is perfect. When I lived in Toronto, there were things I didn't love about the city. Now living in Turkey, of course, I look back on my life in Toronto and I think, oh, everything there is perfect. It's so clean, it's so this, it's so that. And of course, I forget that there are problems there too. And I know that if and when I go back to Toronto, there are going to be things there that drive me crazy. And there are going to be things I really miss about Turkey. So I think it's important just to remember that there is good and bad in everything, in every place, and you just have to make the best of it. If you liked this video, please give it the thumbs up. It's really great feedback for me. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that you miss about a place you used to live, if there's anything you don't like about the place you're currently living in, but that you're just having to make do with. See you next time.